Hi there, everyone, and welcome back to Dark Desires Academy. I'm Miss Anna, and today I want to talk about something that I believe every person exploring submission needs to understand, and that is the difference between respect and fear, because they're not the same thing, and confusing the two can completely change the type of dynamic you create. You can respect someone's authority. You can recognize their standards. You can choose to follow their instructions. You can even feel nervous around somebody who has a naturally commanding presence. But none of those things means that you should generally fear that person. So today, I want you to think carefully about one question. Do you respond to the authority because you respect it, or because you are frightened of what will happen if you don't? There is a very, very important difference. Respect is not simply doing what you're told. Real respect goes much deeper than obedience. Respect means recognizing somebody's experience, boundaries, standards, and authority. It means listening. It means communicating correctly. It means taking responsibility for your behavior. And importantly, respect should work both ways. A submissive can respect a dominant, but a responsible dominant should also respect the person who has chosen to place trust in them. That includes respecting their boundaries, their limits, their privacy, and their well-being, and the right to communicate when something does not feel quite right. Being a submissive does not remove those things. In fact, I would argue that the stronger the dynamic becomes, the more important those things become. This is where some people sometimes become a little confused. From the outside, fear and respect can produce similar behavior. Someone might follow an instruction immediately. They might avoid disappointing someone. They might become extremely careful about what they say. That can look like discipline, but you have to ask yourself why that behavior is happening. Now imagine two people receiving exactly the same instruction. But the first one thinks, I understand what is expected of me. I respect this person and I want to meet the standards that they have set. The second one thinks, I better do this because I'm frightened about what will happen if I don't. The behavior might look identical, but if we look at the psychology of it, those are two completely different situations. One comes from a willing submissive and respect. The other comes from genuine fear. And this matters a lot. There is another misconception I want to challenge, and that is a dominant does not need to shout constantly to demonstrate authority. They don't need to threaten someone every 5 minutes. They certainly don't need to make someone genuinely frightened in order to prove that they are in control. Strong authority can actually be extremely calm. Sometimes a quiet instruction carries far more weight than shouting ever could. Why, you may ask? I'll tell you why. Because genuine authority doesn't need to constantly prove itself. Think about the people who naturally respect. They are confident, they are consistent, and they are clear. They know what they expect. And when they establish a boundary, you understand what they mean. That is very different from unpredictable aggression. One of the strongest foundations of respect is consistency. If someone changes their expectations constantly, you never know where you stand. One day something is acceptable, the next day it isn't. One day communication is encouraged, the next day you're criticized for speaking. And uncertainty can eventually create anxiety. A structured dynamic should give you clarity. You should understand the expectations, you should understand the boundaries, and you should understand how communication works. That doesn't mean everything needs to be predictable, but the fundamental standards should be clear. This is particularly important for beginners. Respecting someone does not mean switching off your judgment. It does not mean ignoring your instincts. It does not mean accepting absolute everything somebody tells you. And it does not mean that having boundaries makes you less submissive. Actually, learning to communicate your boundaries correctly is part of becoming more responsible. A good submissive should be able to say, I understand. I need clarification. I am uncomfortable with that. That crosses one of my limits. Or even, no. If somebody is telling you that having boundaries means you aren't generally submissive, I would question the quality of that person's understanding. Submission is a choice, and a choice only has meaning when you actually allowed to make it. Now, there is another distinction worth making. Nerves. It's not automatically an issue. You might feel nervous before meeting someone you deeply respect. You might feel those butterflies when you're waiting for an instruction. You might feel anticipation when you know you're about to be challenged. That can all be part of the experience. But fear feels different. Ask yourself, can I communicate honestly with this person? Can I say when something doesn't feel right? Are my boundaries taken seriously? Do I feel that I can stop or question something when necessary? Do I feel respect as a person? Those questions tell you far more about a dynamic than simply asking whether someone appears dominant. Titles don't automatically create respect. Calling yourself a dominant doesn't mean someone owes you complete obedience. And calling yourself submissive doesn't mean you owe every dominant access to you. Respect develops through behavior, consistency, communication, experience, trust, and all that takes time. This is something I particularly want beginners to remember. You do not need to rush. Take time to observe how somebody communicates. Look at whether their actions match their words. Pay attention to how they react when you ask questions. And pay very close attention to how they react when you establish a boundary. You can learn a great deal about someone from the way they respond to the words no. Discipline and fear are also very different things. Good discipline has a reason behind it. It teaches something. It reinforces a standard. It creates accountability and it encourages improvement. If you make a mistake with a structured training environment, the objective should not simply be to make you frightened or of making another mistake. You should understand what's happening. Why did it happen? What can you learn from it? And what will you do different next time? That creates development. Fear alone doesn't teach those things. I also want to make something very clear. Healthy dynamics are not entirely the responsibility of the dominant. You have responsibilities too. You need to communicate honestly. You need to disclose relevant limits. You need to ask questions when you don't understand something. And you need to take responsibility for agreements you have made. And you need to stop pretending that silence is automatic, a sign of a good submissive. Sometimes silence is simply poor communication. If you're confused, say so. If you're struggling, communicate. If something crosses an agreed boundaries, then speak. A dominant cannot responsibly respond to information you deliberately hide. Now, before we finish today's lesson, I want you to think about this. What makes you respect someone? Not fear them, not be impressed by them, not fantasize about them, actually respect them. Is it confidence? Is it consistency? Is it experience? Is it the honesty? Or is it the standards? The way they communicate, the way they treat your boundaries. Write your answers down for me. because understanding what earns your respect will help you understand what kind of dynamic you are actually looking for. And then I want you to ask yourself the reverse questions. What behavior would cause someone to lose my respect? That question is equally important. Now let's have a final thought, shall we? As the strongest authority doesn't need to be built on genuine fear. It's built on trust, consistency, communication, standards, boundaries, and respect. You should be able to recognize someone's authority while still thinking of yourself. You should be able to follow structure while still communicating honestly. And you should understand that having limits does not make you weak or less committed. Now, please remember this. Fear can make someone obey for a little while, but respect is what makes someone genuinely want to maintain a standard. And that's a much stronger foundation. I'm Miss Anna, and this has been Lesson 6 of Dark Desires Academy. If today's lesson made you think about respect, authority, and your own expectations, then I've created a workbook to help you explore these questions correctly. You will find the link below. Work through it honestly. Don't write the answers you think someone wants to hear. Write the answers that are actually true for you. It's important because understanding yourself is one of the most important parts of developing within a structured dynamic. Now, I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Until then, think carefully about who earns your respect and, more importantly, why.